at Progressive Policy Institute. And we are bringing you this webinar today in partnership with 74 Million Education Magazine and my co-host Asher Lair Small. We have an amazing panel of people with us today. And the reason that we called this webinar Brilliance and Resilience is because it's a national imperative to get America's kids back to school and start recovering the learning loss. But not everybody is exhibiting the same urgency as our amazing panel today. We will hear from Dr. Tariq Butt from Chicago. He is president of the Chicago Medical Society. We will hear from PPI's senior economist, Michael Mandel. And we're very honored to have some super busy educators with us today. We have Superintendent Michael Hinojosa from Dallas Independent School District. We have Dr. Janet Osgood, who is chair of the school board of the Broward County Public Schools in Florida. And we also have Priscilla Dilley, who is the senior officer of the Leadership Academy Network in Fort Worth, Texas. And we thank all of them for taking time for their primary focus, which is, of course, reopening their schools. And last but certainly not least, we have Maritza Gurdy, who is a regional director of the National Parents Union, and she works out of Philadelphia, although she's coming to us today from Boston. So let me go ahead and start with Dr. Butt. In addition to your role as the president of the Chicago Medical Society, you spent 16 years serving as a board member of the Chicago Public Schools. So you are uniquely qualified for this moment in time. And I wanted to, first of all, find out what you're seeing in Chicago with the Delta variant and the increased challenges for schools.
Good afternoon, Teresa, and it's good to be surrounded by such distinguished educators, which I served on Chicago Public Schools for 16 years, and we did go through one of the pandemic in 2009, but 2020 was much different. So what we are seeing in Chicago and Chicago Medical Society, which is the oldest medical society in Chicago and in the nation since 1850, and what we have done is we have created a COVID-19 task force immediately to make sure that we continue to disseminate information which comes from CDC to local public health departments like Illinois Department of Public Health, IDPH, and CDPH, Chicago Department of Public Health, and make sure that all communities, especially communities which are challenged in more ways, that's where I serve. And I serve like in communities which are the most challenged neighborhoods of Chicago, and where we have the ethnic minorities and immigrant population, and all other population where you have poverty, which does not discriminate and touches all colors. So we want to make sure that we continue to vaccinate folks, and we have been very, very aggressive about it. That's the only thing which can protect folks. So if one message I want to give is that please get vaccinated as soon as possible, because you will be able to, sort of protect yourself, and you'll be able to protect your families, you'll be able to protect your neighbors, you'll be able to protect your communities. So we are very aggressively pursuing that, but with Delta variant, which is also a variant of COVID-19, has really thrown a curveball. And we have seen that now that because it's 2 times more contagious, and also what it has shown is that it can give breakthrough infection to even folks who are vaccinated. The only advantage vaccinated people have, first of all, is that they are vaccinated, so they won't have the severity of illness which folks who are unvaccinated and totally unprotected have. So we really have seen a rise in COVID-19 cases because of Delta variant, and you can see that is across the nation. We are seeing that.
Let me jump in here, because you mentioned that during your time on the board, you went through the H1N1 pandemic, and that caused many schools, thousands of schools nationwide, to briefly close, not at the level we're seeing now, but yet that was never really politicized the way this has become politicized. What is your advice for school leaders who are in the trenches trying to tamp down the rebellion against masks and vaccines and all the different political issues that have cropped up with this?
So, absolutely, Teresa, that's a great question. In 2009, when we were confronted with H1N1, we knew, first of all, a lot more about H1N1 because it was Haemophilus influenza a variant. And, the first cases were diagnosed in California, and that was impacting children more than, adults, what we have seen in COVID-19. There's a contrast that with adults with burden of disease and who are older, we saw that in children, and CDC guidelines came and evolved. So H1N1 was the pandemic in 1918, and the mortality rate was 1 to 3% of the world population. When it came back in another form in 1968, H3N2 variant, then it was 0.03 or 0.003, somewhere around very low. When it came in 2009, so from April to June, there were a lot of clinical studies done, and CDC guidelines were given along the same lines. And in July 2009, it was really called a pandemic because it was in 70 countries. But we knew a lot more about H1N1, and we knew it wasn't causing the mortality. The CDC guidelines were not as complex as you might find them now, because I call it right now pandemic of disinformation at the same time. You have, because it is prolonged, it's a novel virus. Nobody knows about COVID-19 as much. We are learning as we are going through it, whereas H1N1 was a virus which we knew. At that time I called because Mexico City was the first one which closed the city and the schools. So I reached out to the health secretary of Mexico City, Dr. Armando Avado Ortega at that time, and we were able to benefit from what happened in Mexico City. They advised us, and the CDC guidelines were also very, very clear about, that what you have to do, you have to still keep social distancing. And I remember Robert Runze, who later on ran Broward County, was the chief administrative officer. We made sure that we have sanitizer, we advised parents, we had clear communication. We did not close schools in Chicago. That was really a great achievement, whereas there were several school districts which were closed, but we really did close consultation with CDC, IDPH, and CDPH, and made sure that we return our children safely. We give parents the right materials, communication, and it wasn't as politicized because, because at that time there was more information available and we knew more about it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Butt. I'm going to turn now to our economist, Michael Mandel. And Michael, the reason I invited you today to help us get started is because this pandemic really seems to have two pillars. We've got health and safety, and then we've had the impact on the economy. We know that children lost a lot of learning. We know that there is some hesitancy amongst some families to send them back. What is going to happen to these kids if they cannot make up the learning that they have lost in a timely fashion so that it can be the building blocks for even more learning going forward?
Yeah, thanks very much for inviting me today, Teresa. This is such a great panel and a great subject. I have to start by saying clearly health and safety is at the top of the list no matter what. You said there's two pillars here, but I mean the health and safety of the students, the teachers, the parents, the broader community is very important no matter what's going on. And this is a moving target depending on how the local situation, how the national situation evolves. Sort of in the broadest sense, we know that a rule of thumb is that a year of schooling is worth 10% on future wages and future GDP. So, if you sort of lose a year of schooling, it just adds up, not just this year, not just next year, but it sort of adds up into the future. And the numbers just come enormous very quickly. I can't even sort of cite them for you. They're sort of even too large to think about. I do have, before I start, I'm not going to go very long here because nobody really wants to hear an economist. Everybody wants to hear the people who are on the ground. But let me just make a couple of points here. One is that one study of the 1918 flu pandemic, which a lot of schools did close, had trouble finding economic impacts. The pandemic was 1918. They looked in 1940. They could sort of link the people who were in school districts that closed with the 1940 economic census, and they could not find an effect. So just put this in the back of your mind. It is possible to sort of make up these problems, okay? But so there's a couple of questions. One is, how is this impact distributed and what can we do to ameliorate it? One is, it's pretty clear that it hurts young children more going forward. It hurts children with parents with less education. And one study of Philadelphia and surrounding areas showed much more of an impact on Black students and more of an impact on students in the city versus the suburbs. And we keep learning more and more about where the impacts are, but this has the potential for sort of accentuating differences, already existing differences. And the one thing that we do know is that there are things that we can do and that really have a big positive cost benefit sort of summary. So one study looked at extending the school year by an extra month, and they estimated that would cost $75 billion nationally, which sounds like a lot of money, but with a gain of $1.2 trillion over the next 3 decades in terms of a net present value. So that's equal to about $16 return for every dollar invested. And when you've got an investment like that, this is a no-brainer. So I think the main thing that we have to learn from this is that spending money to try to catch students up once we've got the health side under control is going to pay not just for the students, not just for the parents, but for the economy as a whole. And I think that's kind of the major message.
And of course, it hurts parents if kids are not in school, because so many of them, especially lower income families that are in the service industry, they miss work too. So there's a lot of moving parts there.
There's a lot of moving parts and a lot of knock-on effects.
So before I let you go, Michael, what would you say to our school leaders here today?
I would say that when this thing settles down a bit, I'm assuming that it is going to settle down, finding ways to regain part of the lost ground is cost effective in the economic sense in a very strong case. And we can sort of make this case, not just on a national level, but on a local level, that it pays to do this for the local economy and the local tax revenues. So that's kind of the bottom line. So the dollars and cents, once we've gotten past the health crisis, the dollars and cents is there.
Thank you so much. I think that was really, really great to set up our panelists, hearing the urgency from both the public health side with Dr. Butt and the economic side with Michael Mandel. So now I am really excited to finally turn to our panelists, and thank you all so much for being so patient. And I'm going to enlist some help to my partner here today, Asher Lair Small, who is a reporter at the 74 Million. He's been covering schools across the country, so he can kind of give us a little bit of a macro view on that before he asks his first question. Asher.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tressa. And first off, it's great to be here. I'm very excited to hear from the panelists. So just for a bit of a 10,000 foot view on what we're seeing this summer, a report on the lost learning or the unfinished learning from McKinsey put that at a 4-month learning debt in reading for students nationally, a 5-month learning debt in math, and there are disparities falling along a number of categories there, such as race, class, English learner status. But with those academic gains still needing to be made up, we have safety as this huge issue. The Delta variant is sweeping across the country. At the beginning of the summer, it made up only a small fraction of all infections, but now it accounts for well over 90% of all cases. And with kids under 12 still not eligible for vaccinations and won't be for many months, it's clear that school districts really need to be thinking about what sort of mitigation measures they can take to slow the spread of the virus. And studies from last year showed that things like masking, ventilation, distancing are all effective measures to stop the spread. But in a number of places, politics are getting in the way of districts' ability to take even basic measures like universal masking to ensure the safety of their students. So on that note, no better place to begin than with you, Dr. Hinojosa in Dallas. For those who may not know, Dallas has required universal masking in defiance of Governor Abbott's executive order. And so you all are in the thick of a legal showdown. Yesterday, a Dallas County judge sided with the school district, issuing a temporary injunction on the governor's ban, but the ruling's expected to be appealed to higher courts. So Dr. Hinojosa, the situation seems to be changing by the minute. So can you update us on the latest? And also, what's at stake for schools, students, and families in this struggle over masking?
Well, you're exactly right. It does iterate almost hourly nowadays. I just got a tweet from our Attorney General saying that the Supreme Court has supported him. So I had to forward it while we were talking to my attorneys and to the county executive to see what that means. This is kind of our life now. And the amazing thing about it is when school ended for us in June, because we started late, so we went late to start overcoming this learning loss. We only had 100 new cases in Dallas County per day. Then when we came back, we have 4 different starts. We had multiple different calendars. And when we first started, this wasn't even on my radar. But almost immediately, we started seeing the cases go up, 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 up. And the health professionals contacted us. And so we took some bold steps to try to do this situation, to get in control of it. And the governor had issued an order back in May. When he issued the order, it was just political. Nobody really paid that much attention to it because things were getting so much better. But now you fast forward to August, and now things are horrible. And now we have this looming over our head. So luckily our county went to red. So I knew we had an alert. I went to Austin. I heard an attorney talk that maybe the governor's order wasn't enforceable. Then the next day, the Houston superintendent called me and says, what are you going to do? And so then we started collaborating. Then we had a call of all the urban superintendents. And the same thing was happening in every urban county in Texas when all the people are so close together. And then I asked my team to give me a plan that I was going to execute within 24 hours and challenge the governor. Well, that's come and gone. We challenged the governor and we stuck to it. Now, 60-something school districts in the state of Texas have joined us in defying the governor. And like you said, it's like a tennis match. It goes back and forth, an injunction, a hearing. The local courts rule in favor of us. The appeals court rules in favor of us. And it goes to the state Supreme Court, which is political. It's elected Supreme Court. And so then they support the governor and the attorney general. Let me just tell you, let me just kind of shorten this part of it by saying, if I was so wrong, why aren't they beating me up? On Monday, I testified in the court. I've testified in several lawsuits. My attorney asked me 7 questions. Their attorney for the attorney general asked me 4 questions and passed the witness. They could have tried to skewer me, but they didn't. Then the next day I would testify at the Capitol about virtual school. They allowed me 3 minutes to speak. I spoke for 3 minutes. They could have skewered me right there. Here, someone who's defiant of the governor, no questions were asked. They went on to the next witness. And so I'm telling you, it's just, it's on steroids. So back to your other real question about what does this mean for students and families? The data is overwhelming. They do better when they're in person. We're 95% ethnic minority. We're 90% economically disadvantaged. Our parents don't have the option to work from home. Our parents are in the service industry. They're running this beautiful city. It is a tale of 2 cities. And our parents are the ones that are in the hotels, in the restaurant industry, and all those kinds of industries in Dallas. In fact, we have 47% English learners. We have more English learners than El Paso has students, than San Antonio has students. So and the data is overwhelming. The students that have been in school somewhat, and I shudder to think what's happened all over the country, because in some states, they didn't even go back to school until April. At least 50% of our kids came back in October. And the ones that came back have learned a lot more than the ones that stayed out. Only 5% of our kids did better in virtual instruction. And that's because they had parents of agency that helped them move forward, at least stay afloat. So everything's at stake. So people ask me, well, why would you go against the governor? And I said, well, why would I send students to school when I was putting them in harm's way without the protection of a mask? And luckily, I've had a long career. It's my 27th year as superintendent, and I have the ability to walk away from this job at any time. And other superintendents who want to be courageous, they may not have the support of their board. They may not have the credibility in their community because they've only been there for a short time. So the stakes are high for the families, but I'm very fortunate that I was able to just stand up and call what's right, right, and what's wrong, wrong. And it's been amazing that very few people have publicly or privately challenged me on my decision.
Well, we are very proud of you, and we applaud your courage, even though you have job security and a track record that's unparalleled and you could go anywhere, but it still has to be a bit uncomfortable. And I want to follow up with Dr. Osgood on this because she knows a lot about uncomfortable right now. Her board, Broward County School Board, voted 8-1 to continue a mask mandate in defiance of Governor Ron DeSantis. And frankly, from what I've seen on the news, all hell kind of broke loose. I think someone even was burning masks outside your board meeting. I know that parents were shouting and people were really kind of going nuts. If you can, please explain what is happening. Is this a product of misinformation? Or do you think there's some other motivation for what you and your staff have been through? And tell us a little bit about what it's been like on the ground.
Yeah, well, what is happening is something that's immoral and unacceptable. Being a person who is trained in public administration and having taught public policy evaluation, this goes against all of the best practice models and paradigms. There is absolutely no conscience for the lives of human beings. As school board members, we are people, we're human beings. We're living every day with people dying, people getting impacted with COVID and being left with lifelong implications, from our staff to our church members, to our brothers and sisters, our aunts and uncles. We are traumatized by the last 18, 19 months of COVID, and was really having a lot of hope about moving our students back into face-to-face school environments in their loving school families and communities where we could love and support each other and help each other academically, where we could provide the mental health support that we need, as well as the wraparound services. And we attempted to do that, and all hell broke loose. First, we did have people out front burning masks and yelling and screaming. It's been constant emails and threats, just back and forth. And it's getting worse because yesterday, a group was at one of our high schools videotaping students who had masks that was going in. One young lady asked to not be videotaped, and one of the parents pushed her and was arrested for child abuse. So it's gone to a whole nother level with the protesting in a very angry and violent way, coming into school board meetings to speak on other items and yelling and screaming. Right now, the behavior that's being shown is exactly what we've been training our children not to do. We've been teaching them to live as professionals, to peacefully protest, to carry themselves in such a way that we would be proud of them. And now we're seeing others come and do the direct opposite, and now even begin to attack our students. It has been horrific for board members. What people don't see is how we stay up at night thinking, praying, trying to make decisions, trying to find if there's a way to work in a way that you use adaptive problem solving, where you try to take all the perspectives into play, all the fields of expertise, and make a decision. And normally in public administration, you'd have your multiple disciplines: healthcare, law enforcement, education, nonprofit, private sector. They're all there working for the good of education. But when an issue arises, there is a discipline that is the expert on that issue. In this case, it is doctors, it is science, it is medicine, it is healthcare. They released, the CDC released guidelines that we had been following all along when positivity rates in Florida were a lot less. But now those guidelines are not good enough. Our district employs 30,000 employees and over 260,000 students, with 66% of them being free and reduced lunch students. So we were initially headed back to school and thinking that we could make masks optional. We opened schools last year with masks being mandated. We went through the summer. We didn't have any major COVID outbreaks. We had a meeting. The group showed up. It reminded me a lot of what happened January 6th at the White House, where they just started really getting crazy. So I suspended all of the board's business on that particular day until the next day. Well, at 3 o'clock that evening, the CDC released their recommendations and guidelines that said that all K through 12 institutions should mandate masks. So we came back on Wednesday and we voted to do so. Within 48 hours, we got an executive order from the governor proclaiming these parents' rights and saying that we could not mandate masks. So we came back the following Tuesday and we made masks mandatory. 48 hours after that, we got we got an executive rule from the Department of Health and the Department of Education. And then 2 days after, we had to give a written response in which we responded, because we feel that we are in compliance with the mandate, because we do have optional masks for students with medical notes, IEPs, and 504 plans. So we got called into this supposedly hearing where our 2 female superintendents were berated like if though they were on trial and being interrogated. It was just awful. We came out of that with another letter saying that they would take our salaries and all of these other things, but we still continued to stick to our guns with mandating masks, because we know that it's what's in the best interest of our students and our staff. You have kids under 12 that don't have a vaccination option. You have 30,000 employees. We have communities where we know a lot of people are still not vaccinated. You can't practice social distancing with a class size of 26 students and at least 1 or 2 teachers. You can't do it on a school bus. We have some schools that have over 4,000 students in a single school. So you have to use all of your mitigation tools that you have in your toolbox: vaccinations, masks, washing of hands, and practicing social distancing when you can.
So Dr. Osgood, are you at the point now where they're trying to fine you and withhold funds for salaries, and how will you manage that?
So next we responded. We had 48 hours to respond. We responded saying that we believe we are in compliance. We responded saying we believe that the governor is overstepping his constitutional rights, because local citizenries elect local school board members to make those policies. We also believe that the Florida Constitution says that an institution can't penalize another institution for rulemaking. So we sent that letter, and then we got a response back saying that our salaries will start being withheld to the tune of 1/12 of our annual salary. Hear this: for the 8 school board members that voted no. Now, we know in a democracy, governing bodies come as a unit. You can't separate one for the other. Once the vote takes place, the majority wins the vote, and that's the direction you go. So that's to the tune of around $31,000 per month. President Biden did speak with our superintendent. I've had subsequent phone calls with Mary Walls, the senior policy analyst for the White House COVID-19 pandemic task force. And they've said that they will make a provision for us to use our ESSER dollars to make up for those salaries. But those of us that work in this space know that that's still a loss of dollars to the school district. The governor can't control our payroll, but he can withhold the money from our general fund, which still is money that's coming out of the classroom. I just don't understand why any governor in any state, first of all, would want to kill people or cause them to get sick, and then defund public education. We've been given in the state of Florida our governor asked for the first $7 billion from the American Rescue Plan that he has not given to any school district. He has not put in his application to get the other $7 billion of those dollars that school districts can use. So you're in a pandemic, in a crisis. Your kids, according to data and grades, have had tremendous drops, especially in math, Algebra 1, which is the foundation of math, and reading. And you continue to find ways to take money from the public school system. It is almost unconscionable to be in this position and try to even logically think through anybody's rational decision-making or logical decision-making that they would make such horrible policy decisions and declare that it's parents' rights, when we all know that our individual rights end at the moment it causes harm to others.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Osgood. And I don't think any of us envy being in your position, but we certainly applaud that bravery, that courage. Sounds like things have reached a fever pitch. I'll highlight the reporting of my colleague, Linda Jacobson at the 74, who described it as a three-way game of chess between the district, the state, and the US government. So we'll be watching to see how that plays out. But for now, I want to bring in a parent voice. Maritza Gurdy, you organize for the National Parents Union. What are you hearing from families amid all the anxieties of the Delta variant, debates over masking, virtual learning, and we have school leaders on the panel and in the audience too. So I'm wondering what you'd want to make sure they know in this very difficult moment. And do you have tips for how districts can most effectively take parental voices into account?
First, thank you for inviting me. I am the Northeast Regional Organizer for the National Parents Union. My goodness, what can we say? National Parents Union supports families, parents and guardians of school-age children. Anyone, you do not have to be a parent to be part of this organization. You just have to care about educational equity. Right now, we are dealing with something that is unprecedented with regards to people in power, as you stated, playing a game of chess with the people's lives. This is not about infringing on anyone's personal freedoms. This is about keeping children alive, keeping our future citizens safe and away from harm. There are now, I am fortunate to live in a state by which our governor is in full support of mask mandates. I am fortunate to live in a school district right now that, although we've had many, many, many issues for many, many decades, the school district of Philadelphia has decided that there will be not only a mask mandate for any child that attends a district school, but they are also now they just recently are mandating that all of the adults that work with our children be vaccinated. And for those that choose not to be vaccinated, those people will then have to agree to be tested on a weekly basis to ensure that they are not bringing anything into those school buildings that would then jeopardize a child going home and possibly giving this deadly disease to someone in their home environment. There have been lots of polls done by the National Parents Union with, 64% of parents are more involved than ever in their children's education. So as a result of that, they want to know what's going on. They're demanding to know what's going on. 54% of parents want the option to be in school or be virtual as long as it's safe. 42% of parents saying that their children have fallen behind. So they want additional supports. That is where this ESSER funding has to come in. They want their kids to come to school as long as it's safe. 60% says their child does better. 59% say their children are saying, I want to be back in school. 54% of children, they do better in person. I can attest to that. I'm a mother of 6, and 3 of the children, I have a rising second grader, 2 rising kinders, a rising junior in high school. My rising second grader, when she was finally able to go back in school, when they started hybrid instruction back in March in the city of Philadelphia, she was able to get on the honor roll just because of that contact face-to-face with her teacher, but it was very safe. I was also a secretary for the school district of Philadelphia. So I was in a school building. I know what it was like. I saw the efforts that were made, and I'm quite sure the same efforts are being done across the country with regards to making sure the building is clean, it is disinfected, the children are practicing social distancing, wearing their face masks. All of the adults in the building were being tested on a weekly basis, the random tests of all the children, just to make sure everyone is safe, and to see that there are actually states across this country where people are in positions of power and are trying to play God by making these choices. Let it be one of their children, or let it be a family member that then succumbs to this deadly virus, ends up being hospitalized, and then dies. Will they then have a change of heart? Because unfortunately, all these people that are anti-mask, they haven't felt the effects. They haven't had a close family member or friend die from this. So because it hasn't touched them personally, they're trying to make it political and saying that you are infringing on my civil liberties. This is a human issue. If you care about the human population, wear your mask, and and then you choose if you want to get vaccinated. But and if you don't want to get vaccinated, get yourself tested. Tests are given for free across this country. You can go get a test done every single week. As long as you're negative, do what you need to do. But stay away from everybody else if you're not sure of your own status. I'm sorry, I get off my soapbox now.
No, that's why we wanted you with us. We wanted a parent voice at the table. And as a quick follow-up, are you hearing that the communication is sufficient? You talk to parents all across the country, and I know these questions are anecdotal because it's going to change from place to place, but in general, do parents feel like they're getting the information they need?
Yes, in general.
Okay.
But when you really drill down to it, it all depends on how much, how open that school leader is with their parent population. How open and transparent have you been with the parents and caregivers of the children that pertain to your specific school? If during the times when we were in shutdown, you were not speaking with your parents at least weekly, shame on you. When schools are offered hybrid instruction, if you were not making sure, again, that you spoke to your families weekly and in their language, if in case they did not speak English, weekly to give them updates, shame on you. For those places that never closed, that had very minimal, outbreaks, I applaud you because you did what you had to do to keep your children safe in your school. Because while they're in that building, those children belong to that school until we get them.
That is an excellent lead in to Priscilla Dilley, who is the senior officer at the Leadership Academy Network, which I actually had the pleasure of visiting earlier in the summer. And she's an amazing leader, and every single one of her principals that I met on the ground, every single teacher, they looked at those kids in those schools as their babies, and they lived it. You could see it. But one reason that I wanted Priscilla with us today, and one reason that I didn't lump her first question in with the other two district leaders, is that she runs a different kind of school network, and she's got some different kind of pressures in addition. So Priscilla, would you mind telling us about the Leadership Academy Network and your hard deadline and what you're doing?
Absolutely. Great to see you, Tressa, everybody, and great to be here with all these amazing leaders. My name's Priscilla Dilley, and I'm the senior officer for the Leadership Academy Network. It's a partnership between Fort Worth ISD and Texas Wesleyan University. So Senate Bill 1882, what it does, it provides school districts with an opportunity to partner with a nonprofit, an existing charter, or a higher ed institution. And so Fort Worth ISD, Texas Wesleyan created this partnership. We have a total of 6 campuses that we manage and operate through the partnership with Fort Worth ISD. And through this partnership, we operate autonomous from the school district. However, I always tell people with autonomy comes accountability. And so the partnership has contractual goals that all of the campuses have to be status or above in the letter grade. And so the external pressures, as you say, Tressa, are great, but nothing compares really to that pressure that we put on ourselves to ensure that our students have everything that they need to be successful, competitive with the world, and safe, most of all. So the Leadership Academy Network team and we support campus leaders to build strong instructional and cultural systems in our schools and to accelerate student outcomes. So all of this, great things, but then, a pandemic hits and, it requires us to continuously have to modify and shift our practices and see what we do, and do what we have to do for kids. So,
And most of your kids are too young for the vaccine, right?
that's correct.
So what strategies, you told me when I was there that you really needed them in person to make up for the times they had been out and to progress towards that letter grade that you must meet. So what are some of the things that you're doing to keep your little ones safe and in the classroom?
Absolutely. So, us along everybody else, the main thing is we want to consistently provide our families with the information, with the data, and with resources for what they need. Fortunately, I feel that our campuses have, most of our families are on board with making sure that our students are coming to the schools with their masks and practicing, obviously, social distancing where we can, making sure that, frequent hand washing. We all know how challenging that can be for, our 4 and 5 year old babies. However, it's just this consistent reminding kids, this is for safety reasons, not because we don't love you or we don't want to build relationships, but, we're just living in a different world. Just this morning, I went to a campus and the school nurse read a book on germs for the entire campus, and answered questions. And it was amazing to see the questions that kids had. But just utilizing our people in those different capacities so that our students can understand what it's like right now in the school buildings and how to best be safe in that in-person option.
How are your parents handling this?
Well, we're doing everything that we can to just stay in communication. If we let them know, we do the contact tracing. But at the same time, and the teachers and the administration in front of our families, they're the ones that are in the front lines and pushing that communication out, letting them know this is what we're doing. Here's the resources. As Dr. Butt mentioned, here's vaccination opportunities for our older kids. We are giving them all the resources and at the same time letting them know how we are doing everything at the school level to keep them safe.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. And yeah, as you said, we are living in a different world. So I want to fold in a question from the audience. Lori Hills asks, how is your district going above and beyond to educate America's students? What novel programs and interventions can you suggest? And this, I'm going to start with Broward because obviously we are dealing with, it's not just about getting students back in person, but it's also what do we do once they get there? So in Broward, looking at the Florida standard assessments, Broward was the fastest improving district out of Florida's 5 largest districts, with your third graders gaining 8 points between 2015 and 2019, but then losing some of that ground during the pandemic. So Dr. Osgood, I'm wondering if we can take a minute and hear how Broward County schools are planning to make up some of that ground.
Well, one thing that we're very proud of in our district that we have implemented and has a focus that's integrated across the district is mindfulness. You cannot start to educate kids unless you acknowledge the trauma that they're experiencing and you give them some type of techniques and tools to cope with, to help strengthen themselves mentally. We have also worked to continue to provide access to instructions 24 hours through our Canvas model that is an teaching system where curriculum and assignments is there. We started using it before the pandemic. We used it a lot when we were virtual, and we continue to make that available. We have also implemented something where tutoring is available to students. All they have to do is call, schedule it, and we're providing that extra support to them. We just implemented the most aggressive summer program. Robert Runcie, our former superintendent, put in place this very robust summer program that we offered at 91 sites, the largest summer initiative that we've had in Broward in a very long time, with some means of helping students and helping them retain. We had a few schools, two in particular that are in my district, Thorogood, Marshall, and Lauderdale Lakes, actually improved during the pandemic. Those schools were able to stay in contact with their students. We've also just employed an outside company to help us locate students. We have a large number of students that have not made contact, that have not come back to school, that are right now we don't have accountability for. So we're working in a multiplicity of ways to reach our students. We also just implemented something where we will have students that are quarantined be able to access the class through audio and visually if they request, because when you look at math scores, it's impossible to do math with only audio. Students need to be able to touch your teacher, interact, and have contact to work through the construct of different math problems. So we are working across the district. We're allowing our principals to have some autonomy to meet, the individual needs of the students. But by no means do we want to minimize this impact. It is a major impact on education and the academic achievement of our students. And I must say this, to include high performing students. When you look at the data, some of the high performing students have kind of dropped down. Our data shows high performing students and low performing students. The students kind of in the middle kind of just stayed somewhat on a flat line. But we're working with many different strategies to meet children where they are, provide the support services in an equitable way to help get them back on track and moving forward. So we're using this accelerated learning type of approach to strengthening our students. And I began the conversation yesterday because if we could get that money that the governor is holding on to, we could also use some best practices as to adding some, extra days to the school weeks, the school year, some extra weeks, maybe even Saturday school. When I went to school, summer was open all year round and you had set options, for Saturday school. So we want to be able to consider some of those strategies to use to help our students so that we are able to get them caught up and move them forward.
It sounds like you're pulling out all the stops. And I know Dr. Hinojosa is as well in Dallas. I read something that you were missing like 9,000 students when school started, and we're literally going door to door to try to find them. And I know you've set some really high goals for your district with your district improvement plan to meet by 2024. How worried are you about that throwing you off track, and what are you doing?
Well, we are worried about it, and it is significant. And we did Operation Comeback. We went out and actually found a lot of our students. When we started, we were at the end of the senior year last year. When we started by April, we were only at 64% of our students on track to graduate this year. But by the end of the year, we got them to 90% because we went out and found as many as we could. Right now, we're very fortunate that we have found 95% of our students, and only 1% of them are virtual, 94% are in person, but we still have others that we have to get to. Let me tell you, when I was superintendent here in 2008, only 7% of our students actually had any kind of post-secondary credential 6 years after graduating from high school. But this year during the pandemic, we got 10% of our students that graduated from high school with an associate's degree before the 6-year clock started. So we've made a lot of progress, but a lot of that's at stake because that part of that is a partnership with Dallas College, and they have different rules. Dallas Community College have different rules from us. And so we're very worried about what is the interruption to the significant gain that we've made? And our families are worried about it as well. We also had to stand up Operation Connectivity, because we had 46,000 households that had no internet broadband access. We've accomplished that. So we're ticking things off right and left. And every time we do, there's another challenge. But, we do have a can-do spirit in this district, and we'll find a way to deal with it. We just don't need to be fighting the state. We don't need to be fighting our own people to get things done for our students. And that's what's becoming, frustrating. But, they need someone who's a problem solver, not a whiner. And that's why I'm here. And we're going to continue to solve these problems one at a time. But we don't need to be fighting our own people on this situation.
Do you see it getting better or worse?
I think it's still going to be a challenge. I think that by the end of the year, we'll normalize. What I've studied about this variant in Britain, it's bad early, then it gets better. But we're not anywhere close to that right now. But it's going to get worse if we don't have access to our students because they get sick and they don't come back. We got to protect their safe. The parents will forgive us occasionally if we commit academic malpractice. They will never forgive us if we let something unsafe happen to their kids that we could have controlled. We will never be forgiven if we don't take care of that first.
Well, Dr. Hinojosa and Dr. Osgood, you're both speaking about issues that school districts across the country are facing in terms of how to get students who may be missing from schools back into the classroom, how to protect students, how to keep students who have to quarantine up to date with what's going on in the classroom. And I want to do a quick lightning round, maybe starting with Priscilla, then to Maritza, then Dr. Osgood and Dr. Hinojosa, if you don't mind weighing in on what solutions are you seeing? What's leaving you optimistic toward the future?
I'll say that we've learned a lot in the past 18 months. We've learned to have to consistently think outside of the box and become better and better. So, the creativity, it's forced us really to get outside of our comfort zones and really outside of our four walls in the schools and really pursue parents and community and get them in. So it's really just challenged our practices in a good way. And so I'm excited. What I see is are things that our teachers now are more open to, how much they've grown with, the blended learning and, building relationships with families. And so for us, I feel optimistic that this is only going to make us bigger and better for our students.
Thank you, Priscilla. Maritza?
Parents need to be part of the conversation. Parents need to be asked what it is that their children need. They're the most credible source of information. I appreciate what the school leaders and administrators are doing, but this is not going to improve unless parents are listened to and also asked, what is it that your child will need to succeed? We're all concerned. 89% of families are saying they want their kids to come into school in person. So we're supporting you with that aspect. But when a lot of things are happening with regards to the health and safety of the children, we want to stand by you and support you in making sure that things occur in your specific districts so that all children can come back safely. But we need transparency so that we can know what we're dealing with. It should not be something that is decided upon without our input.
Thanks, Maritza. And when you say transparency, like how can school leaders most effectively communicate with the parents in their district?
Meet them where they are. Ask them what is the best way to communicate with them. I mean, millions of dollars were spent giving children Chromebooks to allow them to learn virtually. They can use those same Chromebooks and be part of a meeting and make sure it's had at a time that is respectful of the parents' work schedules. Don't have it at 10 o'clock in the morning. Don't have it at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Have it in the evening and also do it on a Saturday when most families are home and able to be home. Have it on a Sunday if you have to have it on a Sunday. If you know that most of your parents only have one day off a week. Meet them where they are, make the information accessible to them in the language that they know and understand, and ask them questions. Let them be part of the conversation. Do not keep us in the dark.
That's so important. Thank you. So now I'll pass it to Dr. Osgood. What's leaving you optimistic, or what solutions are you looking toward?
So I'm a native of Broward County, and the history has shown that the people of this community are resilient people. They have really bought into the concept of education being a priority for our entire community. What gives me a lot of hope is when I see the collective excellence that is in place at this time, where you have educators, you have our phenomenal teachers who just continue to pivot and do what they need to do, our bus drivers, our janitors, all of those that are working right now in a non-traditional way. We have great partnerships in Broward County with the Children's Service Council, our municipalities, the Community Foundation, the Broward Education Foundation, in our business community, our law enforcement entities. So we're taking a communal approach to prioritizing the education of our children. And I think ultimately that's what's going to get us through our nonprofit organizations and all of us working in a way that what we're doing is integrated. We have many faith-based organizations that have adopted schools. So it allows you to meet the need of that school, whether it's reading help, whether it's math help. We have some wonderful volunteers and parents that are a part of what we do. We have parent engagement seminars that have, 4,000 or 5,000 people virtually. So as Dr. Priscilla said, we've learned some things through this. So we know that we can reach our community better virtually. So we will continue to do that in some instances where we're able to have those meetings in the evening and at non-traditional times. And I'm dependent on this community. I know the resiliency of this community. And that's why I am so determined to protect the community. One COVID outbreak in a school in Broward County impacts the whole entire community, shuts it down. Our children are at home, our parents are out of work, and it's just a big fiasco. This is such a serious pandemic. We're also working very hard to get people vaccinated with pop-up vaccination sites. We're offering vaccinations at some of our schools and testings, but a lot of the community-based organizations are working together to try to get as many people vaccinated, dispel a lot of the myths about the vaccinations. And I have confidence that we will get through it, but we have an obligation to minimize the casualties, to use what we have in our toolbox so that not another person dies because we didn't make the right decision.
Thanks, Dr. Osgood. Yeah, it truly sounds like a team effort. It takes a village, right? So I know we're running up on time, but I'll pass it to Dr. Hinojosa and then Tressa, stop us when we need to. I know we started a bit late.
Well, you have to always confront the brutal facts, but never lose hope, because that's what we are for young people. And so we've gone through this thing, we've learned stuff through this creative tension, and we don't need to snap back like a rubber band to the way we used to do things, because we weren't serving all our families, as many of us now have to admit. So what we need to do is, like I asked to have this question, why would I ever suspend a student again? We got all this technology, we got these devices, and so we've got a program of reset centers where we're completely reinventing in school and out of school suspension. We got to take advantage of all these tools that we have. And our people are compliant, our parents and families are compliant with us, and they're depending on our leadership to take us to the next level. Here's our chance to reinvent ourselves. I grew up with a lot of guys in Dallas that are a lot smarter than me, but this version of school didn't work for them. And so we need to take advantage of how we figure that out. So thanks for having us for this event.
Well, I have to say, I'm really encouraged by what I heard from Dr. Hinojosa and Dr. Osgood about recognizing a little bit more need for more autonomy. Priscilla enjoys that in the Law Network schools. I was able to watch it in action, and she takes the accountability part of it very, very seriously. I want to thank everyone, including our economist, Michael Mandel, and our medical expert, Dr. Butt. Thank you for your patience with our little technical glitch at the top. And I'd like to encourage everyone in the audience to share this video. It will be up soon on YouTube. It will be on the Progressive Policy Institute website. It will be on our Facebook page. But what these educators and parents and experts had to say was so important. And it made me feel very inspired to know that we've got people like this looking out for America's kids. So thank you all for coming, and good luck to you. We're all rooting and pulling for you.
Thank you.
And be safe.